Welcome back to the Radium Records channel. I'm Bradley Denniston, and in this video today, I'm going to be breaking down my latest single, All My Love, which is kind of a retro pop, soul, indie vibe, and I'm going to break it all down. This is part one of a three-part series because I want to go in the weeds with y'all. So let's dig really, really deep into what I'm doing here, and hopefully this will be a really great learning experience for you guys, and if you like the song, you might even go listen to it. All right, let's dive in. Hold up though. Before we dive into the session, I need you to subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I'm going to keep bringing you guys game on mixing, mastering, producing, vocals, all this stuff that I've done for over 25 years with Emmy, Grammy, Oscar nominated work, platinum records under my belt. I'm here to give you guys all my skills for free. So just sub to the channel. That's all I ask. Now let's dive in. Starting out, let's go to the drums.
Go ask your heart.
Now let's break down the drums. Before we go into all these stems of the live players, I want to unhide the MIDI parts and show you guys where this started, because it's easy to think that like you just grab a drummer and you go, hey, play drums on this. You know, you're going to make it dope. But as a producer, you got to come up with that vibe. You got to know what you want, what parts need to do what, fills, etc. And so I program all of that stuff ahead of time. And then when I hire a player, I say, hey, pretty much do what I'm doing, but make it way cooler, more human, obviously, because you're a human, more dynamic, give me different fill options, etc. So they'll take maybe like 5 takes and give me 5 takes of stems, depending on whether I'm in the studio with them or not. But it all kind of started with a bunch of samples. You got hats, cymbals, toms. These are probably just like samples from different libraries, etc. And then I was using, I think, Addictive drums, right? So Addictive drums too on this. And they have a dry kit, which is really, really good. The Addictive drums kit that I'm using here, the vintage dry. So this is a really dope kit. And I love this for soul, funk, etc. Great starter kit to write parts and everything. And sometimes I'll just keep it. I won't even hire a drummer. And if I don't need to hire a drummer, this actually will land on the record. It's happened many, many times on a lot of my songs. And it's all kind of MIDI and programmed out and figured out ahead of time. And then I have the drummer cut the parts. And then I'll go through every single part of the drum and I will auto align them. So I'll auto align all the parts because I find that it typically gives you a better center image, better anchor, mid-range, low end, etc. The cymbals on the top, they get tighter and not so phasey, washy. So I just auto align these in groups. I don't auto align the whole kit. I used to auto align the whole kit and I would always have issues with like room mics and stuff because it would lock the distance and then your dimension, like the drums turn into this flat 2-dimensional thing. So now what I do is I group individual parts. So I have the overheads grouped, I have the snares grouped, and then I have the kicks grouped. And then there's just some EQ on the overheads here, which I typically don't like this 500 area, right? It gets kind of boxy, especially in overheads. And I notice with a drum kit when it's mic'd up, even really well, you're going to get that 500 buildup, that papery, that cardboardy kind of thing. And so you start taking it out of all the drums. So this is the snare, took it out of the snare, right? Out of the snare tops, both of them. Okay. And out of the snare bottom, let's see. Yep. So more like 450, 460 area on the bottom. And then the kick drum, yep, took out 467, right? So it just kind of cleans up the drums, make them a lot more glossy. If you do want that papery sound and that really, really vintage sound, then fine, leave the 400 to 500 area in there. But that's what I do. Then we got some mono mics here for the rooms. And then I'll show you what I did to build my own rooms because I didn't want to rely only on these mono room mics, but these also have EQ on them. And we're just shelving down the bottom and top on that one. And on the room, mono room 1, we're taking out 280 and shelving bottom and top. So pretty typical with room mics because I want the room mics to be centered on the middle, the mid-range of the drum kit. And these sound like this, just the room mics. They sound great. They give you a nice grit, which gives you that soul, right? That feeling of dirt and grime and, you know, just reminds me of like a city street, which I love. And I think that that sounds like tape as well. But then what I did with the drums, we took all the drums to the mix bus. The drum mix bus is these 4 NLS buses on these settings, 1, 2, 3, 4, Pro Q3 doing some 1K looks like boost to push the mid-range. And then we have NLS bus 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have the Pro Q3 dipping a little bit of that 400 and pushing up half a dB of 40, right? So give you a little sub. And then that goes to a drum master bus, which we have the R bass on from Waves. We have the UAD Shadow Hills compressor. And this is a really interesting compressor because it's not really compressing much, but it is adding a lot of harmonic structure and character. And there's these 3 different settings for the transformer, which is really, really, really key to this compressor. Let me explain. If you go to the nickel setting, you're really centering your low end around 150 hertz. If you go here into the middle, which is the iron setting, you're setting around 100 hertz. So it's real punchy. And then you go to steel and you go more down into the 50 hertz in the sub area. So that's really important setting to this compressor. Also, you have a discrete circuit and an optical circuit, and you can go through both or just one, right? So I'm going through both. I have discrete and optical going. And this is just an insanely good compressor. I don't know what to say. It's great on drums. These next plugins are doing heavy lifting. This is a black box analog design giving me pentode tube, right? And triode tube distortion. So we're getting harmonics from the tubes, and then you have a saturation knob here. I just love this plugin. It's insanely good. And let me play it for you, bypassed in and out, so you can really hear what it's doing to these drums, because it's doing some heavy lifting. Sounds so good. And it's just those harmonics and like things come forward, the drums feel more impactful, everything just kind of sounds better. So anytime a plugin makes something sound better and what I'm going for, I use it. All right, after the black box analog design, we use the Brainworks, and I'm just using this for the widening, and I do this a lot, and I'm just going 107% on the widening. It's just widening the kit out a little bit, and I'm using it for a gain stage, so I'm taking it down 2 dB here on the gain out. And next up, we got the Pro Q3, again, taking out 400. As we keep compressing and adding things, it's kind of bringing that 400 to 500 up again a little bit, right? I'm playing housekeeping by bringing this back down. Also, the low end will get really crazy as you go through compressor plugins with harmonic structure and black box analog design, adding pentode and triode tube stuff. It's like, you know, you take a fundamental and you're putting harmonics into it, and the harmonics will keep creeping back in, right? So that's all I'm doing. I'm just kind of taming those harmonics back down. Then we have the gold clip, which is doing a whole lot of nothing, really. I just have it on for the box tone for the most part. I'll play this back and forth. Some of you may not even be able to hear the difference here. This is one of those funny plugins where when I turn it on, it sounds better. So I leave it on. I'm not even joking. I'm not even clipping. No gold, no alchemy. It's literally the box tone and that's it. Like everything else is like not doing anything, but it's on and it sounds great. L1 limiter, catching overs, threshold, negative 0.3. That's it. Curves equator. This is doing just a little bit of cleanup. Okay. Watch this and listen as I bypass it in and out. Also, it's doing some damage control because the drums at the last chorus get really crazy, right? It's like, you know, we're like getting really big, and I'll go to the last chorus so you can really hear what's going on there with the drums. So check it out. Here's where the drums get bigger. So that's what's going on the actual drum mix and master bus. Now, here's a really cool thing that I'm doing with the drums is this drum room bus, okay? So bus 10 is drum room bus, and I have the UAD Ocean Way Studios because I wanted a stereo drum sound, and I want this record to feel like it's recorded in a really nice, expensive studio, right? It's a soul record. I want it to sound tape and, you know, 70s nice analog studio. So that's what I got going on here. Let me play this and mute it and bring in the drum room in and out for you. So good, right? It's all of a sudden you're in a space that sets the stage for the whole song. So that was the idea of this whole record, was to set it in a studio space, not to be in a cathedral, not to be in an otherworldly space, but to set it in a small, pristine, kind of old school classic recording studio. And I don't have that budget. So I faked it, right? Now let's move on to the bass, which is going to be something you guys might make fun of me for, which totally fine. Drop some comments about how ridiculous this is. But I use the actual AI bass in Logic Pro 11 for the bass line for this whole track. And the reason I did that is because I liked it. You know, when I like something, I just go with it. With producing, you learn to have confidence in your decision making pretty quickly. I used to second guess everything, like, oh, if I use this sample or this loop, you know, that's lame, and I need to go get a player, and I need to redo this and redo that and redo this. But I felt like this just felt good, so I left it. And that's the truth. And the really cool thing about Logic Pro 11 is this AI bass player. The drummer, yeah, cool, whatever. But the bass player is actually really good. And I don't know why, but I'm just leaning towards it more and more lately. I just really, really like it. It's really fun to play with, and it's powerful as fuck. So this is the bass player, the actual plugin. Then it has some compression, a little console EQ on it, which is like a Neve style EQ. And then we're just bringing this down and bringing the 40 hertz up in the sub. So here's what the bass and drums sound like for the last chorus. Doing what it needs to do, holding down the pocket, right? And then for the verses, I bounced these to MIDI so that I could really mess around with the transitions and stuff. As you can see, I have like this audio bounce for this transition, and then I got MIDI bounced so that I can mess around with the MIDI notes. So I kind of have the bass player do its thing, and then in Logic, you can literally just right click on it and say convert to MIDI region, and then you get the MIDI and the chords. And the chords are generated from the actual chord track. So this is really, really cool and really powerful, and I love producing this way, or sometimes even just starting to write this way, because you get ideas quick and the bass player sounds good where it makes it into a final record. So I'm happy with it. So you put the chords in, and then you can double click on the actual bass player, and you can mess around with all this stuff: complexity, intensity, the type of bass player, what it should follow, the drums or the chord rhythm or whatever. And then you can also do like the melody, right? Root only, some notes, octaves, some, phrasing, long, short, or medium. So this is really fun. It's kind of like working with a bass player, and you're just getting instant feedback from them. That's how this ended up in the final, was the AI bass ended up in the final because I just like kind of dialed it in, and I liked it so much that I was like, why get a bass player if I'm really into this? Sounds great to me. I'm happy with it. So that's what ended up in the final, which is really fun. Hope you guys like this video. Part 2, I'm going to break down all of the guitars, the synth sounds, and then part 3, I'm going to get really, really detailed on the vocals and the orchestral arrangement that happened in this song. So if you guys want to get into those, click the link in the description and tap in.